Welcome to the next installment in this episode of Parental Estrangement. This month, as promised, we'll be talking about the impact that internalized toxic masculinity has on parental estrangement and the influence that in-laws have on parental estrangement. And this would include mother-in-laws. So this month has been, we've covered thus far our children being in relationships with individuals who may be exploitive or abusive relationships, right? Exploitive, manipulative, right? We've talked about how parents can be exploitive and manipulative, and those being all roads that can lead to parental estrangement. Today, however, I want to talk about another family dynamic that can be very harmful. All of them can be harmful because, of course, they're leading to parental estrangement. But this family dynamic is a very, I won't say popular, but it's very common that it destroys families. It wrecks relationship between not just a parent and an adult child, but potentially wrecks relationships between the grandchildren and the grandparents, and ultimately can wind up destroying marriages. This month has been centered around the family dynamic of it, of parental estrangement. And the reason I'm struggling is because I really want to cover substance use disorders next month, and I want to have someone come in who is, a professional in that field, because I don't want to, I don't want to, hold up or prop up stigmas and things that can become harmful, because we don't. One thing here in this community is this is a brave and safe space. I do not want it to come off as if we are blaming and being horrible to people who are struggling with disorders, substance use disorders, mental health disorders, any disordered behavior that's as a result of either trauma or, this isn't my field, so I don't know what other reason there would be. Okay, so I need to make a disclaimer right now. I am not a mental health professional, a counselor, a therapist, none of that. What I share with you here is personal experience, what I've learned through research, through trial and error, and through talking to other parents, both online and offline, and just coming across other parents online and individuals online experiencing parental estrangement, okay? I do want to make that very clear. This episode of parental estrangement, it deals with the disordered relationship between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. And that can be either the mother-in-law can be the issue, or the daughter-in-law can be the issue. Whatever the fact, or whatever the issue, it can destroy families. And so I want to start by talking about how, as mother-in-laws, we can play a very destructive role in destroying our own families. As a parent who may have been, exposed to childhood traumas, that parent can grow up and, become a parent themselves. And although they don't want to be the same as those, caretakers or parents who raised them and may have caused them harm, there are some times where the parent can create a new version of the trauma or of the abuse that their parent created in them. It may not be physical, mental, or emotional abuse, or intentionally those abuses, but it can be, a parent parenting from their wounds that they never healed from. So let's say a parent, wasn't protected by their parent. They can become a helicopter parent, right? Let's say a parent had a parent who had a substance abuse disorder, right? That can create a codependency, right? And so those are ways in which, as parents, we can if we don't heal properly, if we don't get the help, if we don't do the work, we don't do the research to find out in ways in which we can heal ourselves, we can pass on those, traumatic behaviors and patterns to our children who've never experienced that trauma or that abuse. So we have children that are living as if they've been traumatized from the same traumas the same abuses that we've been through because we've parented through those wounds, right? So I'll have two examples for you today. One example is of a mother-in-law who may have endured abuse as a childhood abuse or abandonment issues or, whatever disordered environment that mother may have endured, and how that can pour into not just her relationship with her adult child, but anyone who comes into a relationship with that adult child, okay? Then the second example will be where an in-law, and in this case we're talking about the relationship between a mother-in-law, her son, and her daughter-in-law. So in this case, the daughter-in-law may have suffered some sort of disordered behaviors or patterns in their own life as a child, right? And so that could impact how they view the world and how they react to, certain things or family dynamics, okay? And so I wanted to preface this with how we're going into this. I don't offer, any type of, advice to you. I give you examples, and I share some of my personal insight from what I've went through with my own children and our journey through parental estrangement. And then I leave it up to you to make the decision how you want to proceed and be able to get the assistance to make the changes that you want to make. I'm here. I offer tools that I've learned, that I've adapted, that I've modified to help those who haven't been through this and may be going through this now, because it took me 10 years to get to a place where the self-work that I was doing became apparent to me, where it became reflective and it started to move into other areas of my life and help me to find peace and calm and acceptance and a willingness for growth, okay? So let's start with the mother-in-law, how a mother-in-law can be harmful to her own family. Let's say the mom grew up and let's say this. Let's say that the mother grew up and her parents may have, maybe her father was absent and her mother was incarcerated. Let's say that the mother is incarcerated and the mom is raised by, family members. And these family members are, in her mind, and from what she knew, were her actual parents, right? And let's say that mom finds out later on as a child, late in life, maybe as a teenager, that these are not my parents, right? So now there's a lot to deal with. There's a lot of trauma there. Betrayal, right? Mistrust. This isn't my family. Now having to build a whole new relationship with another individual they didn't know, who may not be able to connect with them because they didn't have a bond, right? And so all of these factors play into how, as an adult, that individual will navigate the world, especially if they don't get the assistance that they need. Let's say that person grows up and becomes a parent and gets married or has children. Just, with it doesn't necessarily have to be get married, but let's say they have children with the mate and that mate and them raise the children, right? And let's say that maybe there's a issue where the parents split and the mom then has to depend on the children. Not has to, but the mom then begins to depend on the children for their source of security. That's where they get the love. That's where they get the feeling of family, and it feels good, and it's safe space for them, right? Whatever childhood traumas that parent went through that they have chosen not to get help for, they parent through those wounds. So their children then become people who are living as if they endured the very things that that parent endured when they did it. Okay? Because why? We parent from our wounds. Even if it's that we don't want this to happen to our own children, what happened to us, there's a fear factor, there's a protective factor, there are behaviors and personalities that we develop as a result of the pain and wounds that we've gone through. So we pass those on to our children. Maybe not in the way that it was passed on to us, but we do pass them on. So let's say that this parent, this mother-in-law, her son grows up and he decides to take a partner. And the mother is very angry about it because the son has been there and been their sense of comfort, their sense of security. Maybe even that son had been working, helping to take care of the family, paying bills. We don't know. This is a scenario I'm giving you. But let's just say that's the case. And let's say that now that the son is moving on and he's now have his family, his availability is not as open or not as available to be there for the mother. Maybe there's some resentment there that happens because now there's competition, right? Not competition in a way of a mate, but just competition for attention. And in this case, I want to talk about the competition for power and control. This is a very toxic, dangerous type of relationship. And it's why I want to cover this, because I've talked to other parents, I've talked to people, and I've been on the receiving end of this in past relationships, okay? There is a level to which the parent may go to in order to protect their power and control. And that means that they are willing to destroy anything and everything that their child loves just to isolate and to create space for themselves. And if there's even more disordered patterns and behaviors to the point where there is vengeance needed to exact upon the child because the parent feels that the child has rejected them or abandoned them and they want them to pay. I'll give you an example. A grandmother decided, because her son was not listening to her when she said, I don't want you to have this person to be married to. I don't like who you chose. And that grandmother became so angry that the son did not listen to her, that she then took his baby that was from his previous marriage and weaponized the relationship between he and his child. She aligned herself with the ex-wife of that individual, decided, even though she hated and didn't want anything to do with that individual prior, the ex-wife prior, and did everything in her power to destroy that marriage, she aligned herself with that spouse in order to take custody of the child away from the son. Now, if you think that that is uncommon and it's too far-fetched and it's something that could never happen, why would a parent do that? We have to leave that to the mental health professionals to speak about, because I can't. What I will tell you is there is a level of separation from the actual reality of what's going on and what the individual believes is a violation of whatever they've set up within their heart and mind of what is happening and what is causing them harm, and that someone needs to pay. These type of behaviors, I'm quite sure there is some type of, diagnosis or what have you that a mental health professional can assign to that. That's their job. I hear people talk about narcissism and narcissistic and all that, and I still don't understand it. I will not try to diagnose or pin that label on anyone else. What I do know is that people who do suffer underneath those diagnoses are people who have endured extreme amounts of pain and abuse as children. And that's only a fraction of what I know because I've only read certain things. There can be way other reasons why a person can wind up with that type of diagnosis. But let's, for the sake of this discussion and example, say that potentially, what if it is what's happening, right? That is something that can wreak havoc on a family emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, destroying the family. This is what I mean when I say if we as parents don't do the work on ourselves, we tear down our own families with our own hands, right? When we are getting into spaces where we are controlling and helicopter parenting adult children, we are creating an environment that can cause conflict within our adult children's marriage. Our children may never tell us that that's what's happening, right? They may not want you to know that my wife or my husband or my mate doesn't like you, because, and I can say it from my point of view. I want my family to be whole and to be able to get together and gather and have dinner and have, family time. So, of course, if there's something that's happening with my mom, I really wouldn't want to, well, in the past, that was the case. I really wouldn't want my mate to know what's happening, right? Because then I don't want that to destroy our peace and our happiness within our home, right? And so the same thing can apply for our children. They can be stuck in the middle, trying to create peace, trying to justify the parent's behavior, and at the same time trying to protect their spouse. So there's no way for them to win in that situation. And ultimately, they have children and they have someone they love. They have to make a decision in the best interest of their mental health and in the safety of their family. It's only fair. So when we say we don't know why our children are estranged from us, we don't know why they chose to go no contact, we have to be honest with ourselves about a role we may have played in the destruction of the relationship that we have with our children. Okay? And now this is where I'm trying to hear, I see 1742, and I try to keep these to 30 minutes, but I want to use a quick example of how I violated a relationship between my son and myself in his marriage. When my son got married, I was not happy in how things came together. I won't go into details, but any parent would have been angry about how things developed. We had someone call us and tell us that our son was getting married and that they had denied him a marriage certificate, and they wanted us to come down because they had told him, even though he was of legal age, the people that were there at the courthouse sensed something was not okay and called us and said, we've told him that he cannot get married without your signature because we don't think what's happening here is healthy. And in that moment, I had to make a decision that was in the best interest of my son, because even though we talk with him and we raise our children and we teach them what the right thing is, they will grow up, develop their own personality and their own likes and dislikes, and make their own choices. We'd already had a discussion. Our family was in uproar about everything, but we made a decision to support him because what he said to us is, this is my responsibility. And so we said, okay. So when I talk to the lady and I say to her, that's my son, we've had this discussion. We didn't know that it was happening now, but I'm glad you called us, but we have no right to intrude on his decision. He's told us he's made his decision. And so time went on, the wedding came up, we were, excluded from the wedding. It was performed in a different language than we spoke. And I spoke out at the wedding, and it was not proper. And it was in my own interest because I was angry about how I felt. I'm not going to put anybody else in this. I was angry about the way I felt about how disrespectful things had been up to that point. And I had no right to destroy their wedding day by speaking out. And so that's how we got on the road to estrangement within my family. And that's something I'm willing to share to help other parents to understand. When we say we don't know how we got to a point of estrangement, we know because there's something within us that is giving us a tap on the shoulder that says, this isn't okay. Okay? And so I did want to share a personal side of it so that other people see when I come here and I talk with you and I share what, parental estrangement has been for us. I'm doing so from the depths of my heart because I don't want other families to be destroyed or to have to navigate their way back to each other the way our family did. There were things that we could have avoided had we behaved or had we addressed our own personal issues. Okay, that was not my right. It had nothing to do with how I was going to be living my life. That was my son's family. And so that I had to apologize for later, and I had to have a one-to-one with my son where he told me, this is my decision, this is the decision that I've made, and I want you to respect that. And that's what we did. The second example I want to use is when there is a daughter-in-law who may have experienced some type of childhood trauma themselves. Maybe it's, abandonment, maybe it's, abuse, whatever it may be that creates a wound within them. And they grow up. And as I mentioned, as parents, we can pass on traits to our children. They may have never endured any type or any form of abuse, but in fact, that abuse that we endured, that we didn't heal from, we passed on patterns and behaviors to our children, and they are living as if they have actually been abused themselves when they haven't, okay? So let's say that comes into play. And the belief system that the daughter-in-law has is that when I get married and I don't have to deal with my mate's parents because I didn't see that happen in a healthy way, right? So I don't have to deal with them. They are not going to be in our business. And then let me say this. This is where I come back to mothers. If you are a parent who is living through your children, through the wounds you endure through your marriage or through your relationship with their parent or their parents' parents, and you call and you bring that up into your child's marriage to instruct them in the way that they should go because you didn't go that way and this is how it happened, you rob them of having their own healthy relationship. You rob them of having their own experience. You steal that experience of having a healthy family away from them because you want them to live through your wounds, okay? So back to having a daughter-in-law who maybe that is her story. And so maybe her mom didn't live or have any engagement with her father's parents, right? And so maybe the mother gives some feedback. Well, if I was you, I would keep everybody over there out of your business. In the beginning, you don't have to worry about it, right? We can also look at this as there's a disordered pattern. Maybe that young woman is not having anything to do with her own family. Maybe there's disruptive or disordered behavior patterns and toxic things that are going on within that family dynamic that they bring into the dynamic with now the son, right? That can become a problem because now what happens? If the parent is not wise enough, does not have enough experience, does not look at that situation and recognize it for what it is. This is my child's decision. They've made a choice on this person, and that is it. I have no say on that. You can create a situation where you can become estranged from your child because you speak out against this individual, and the individual can use it as fodder and flame to create a division because your parents don't like me, your mom don't like me, and they don't like me because of this and that and the other. And now, who do you think your son is going to choose? He's going to choose his wife. He's going to choose his mate. You are a parent. And as parents, we have to remember we're not competing for a relationship with our child. We already have a bond with them. We birth these children. We know the most intimate of things about our children, but what we don't know is who they are in their relationships. That's a different type of experience, one that we may never have information on. We are observers. And so whatever that dynamic is within their relationship, now you have the struggle, the tug of war, right? The mother-in-law is going to not give up because I have a relationship with my son and you're not going to destroy it and you are just evil and you don't want me to have anything to do with my son. And all the while, you are pouring exactly what a toxic daughter-in-law or disordered daughter-in-law would love to happen. Because the more you fight her, the more you push at her, the more you point out her flaws, the more you talk about her, the more she will create a space for herself in victimhood, and your son is not going to hold on to that very long. He is going to want peace in his home. And if it means cutting you off in order to get that peace, then he is going to leave you at your house and he's going to move on to his. And you won't have a relationship at all. When I started to have this conversation, I knew there were going to be so many people. Oh, this is another mother-in-law, and she's picking and she's pulling and tugging, and this. I'm coming to you with experience. When I tell you that I know what horrible mother-in-laws look like, I know what that experience is like, and I made a decision that was not going to be my life. That was the decision that I made. That moment in which I spoke out at my son's wedding happened in a moment of rage and anger, and it was something I had to deal with because I had to look back and remember the stories my mother told me about my grandmother, who she had issues with, that didn't want to let go of her own son. My mom told me about how she went through, and I was there to witness how we had to navigate such a very painful relationship with my step-grandmother, being alienated, treated as other, not accepted. And so when I became a stepmom, when I became a mother-in-law, my goal was to be better than what I had received. And that's why I say we have to be careful that what we have gone through in our own experiences, that we aren't transferring them over into our relationships with our own children. Me understanding how there was division put between my mother and my father meant that I was going to come into this situation not wanting the same for my children. But it also meant that I needed to heal from that so that I didn't keep identifying that in someone else, so that I didn't keep pointing to that as an issue. When we have a daughter-in-law who has made a decision that she doesn't want the relationship between our son and ourselves, and it makes her uncomfortable, we have to respect that. And like I said, I am not a mental health professional or therapist or psychiatrist or none of that. I'm telling you what worked for me. I had to get to a point where I had to love my son from a distance so that he had peace in his house and I had peace in mine. It had to get to a place where I could see that No matter how much I spoke love and life and protection and created an environment in my home that was welcoming, that this individual, whoever it was not going to receive it because it was never meant to land. We have to get to a place where we can come to a place of acceptance and learn to be quiet. We can see things happening, want to say something, want to speak into it. But as I said, we don't know what our children are doing in their homes. We don't know what's going on in their relationships. So what we are seeing, we have raised our children. We've given them the gifts. We've given them the tools to go out into this world. And we have to depend on the fact that they come back to the roots. They come back to what they know. I'll share this bit of insight with you before I end the discussion here. I had to come to terms with the fact that I was codependent, that I went into bad relationships, that I stayed in a domestic violence relationship for far too long. And I had to come to an understanding that codependency, I allowed that to influence and to color how I parented. And so it created personalities and behaviors and patterns within my children that they lived as if that had been their story. So when you see your child come into a relationship with someone who may be exploitive, who may be manipulative and abusive, understand that at some point in their life, there was something that influenced them as a child that they didn't understand what an unhealthy pattern looks like. And that is the hardest pill to swallow. A lot of you are not going to want to take accountability for that. But as I posted earlier today, those of us who don't want to be accountable, those of us who don't want to work on changing toxic patterns and behaviors and work on building healthy relationships with ourselves first, and then healthy relationship with those around us, if we don't want to put in the work, we cannot expect not to be in the season where our children have been estranged from us or have chosen no contact. People have to protect themselves. They have to make a decision to keep their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health, especially in this world today, when there are so many outside factors that are stressful enough. So what do I say to moms who say, well, it's my daughter-in-law. She's creating this conflict, and she destroyed the relationship between me and my son. I say you're probably right. I've had that experience multiple times. But I also knew that after the second time, I came to an understanding that this is what this is. Did I get it right completely the second time? No. The third time caught me off guard, and I was like, oh, I know this. I've seen this. Okay. And I had to learn self-preservation. I say to you, and I'll get a little closer so you can understand what I'm saying. It is important that you choose your peace. It's important that you choose your peace. You do that by doing the work on yourself. You be accountable. If you've caused harm, own it. Don't sit and say it was justified. Oh, this is why I did it. This is why. No, when I did what I did, I had to apologize because I had to say I was angry, and I allowed my anger to fill and to contaminate a day that was yours. We have to own our own shit. And if we don't own it, we can't expect people to want to deal with us. Would you want to deal with somebody who never takes accountability, who never wants to own what it is that they've done or they've committed or created harm or conflict continuously in your life, you would want to retreat to. And so I'm hoping that in this discussion that there is a mother-in-law out here or out there that sees this and is able to identify ways in which she may have created harm in her family, may have caused destruction of a relationship within her family. If there's a mom out there who hasn't navigated into the realm of motherhood, of mother-in-lawhood yet, I'm hoping that you're able to gain some insight from how you can be a tool to destroy the relationship with your own child. If there's a daughter-in-law out there who this is how you